The cop noticed him because he didn't stand out. No shouting, no arguing, no nervous movement. Just a quiet man, standing slightly apart from the noise of the street, hands relaxed, eyes steady. The kind of presence people ignore until they misunderstand it. Don't forget to subscribe and comment where you are watching. The officer had seen thousands like him, or at least he thought he had. Men who avoided eye contact, men who didn't speak unless spoken to, men who looked small in moments where authority filled the air. To the cop, quiet meant compliant, or worse, weak. So he stepped closer. "Hey," the officer said, his voice sharp, loud enough to turn heads. "You got a problem? Why are you so quiet?" The man didn't answer immediately. Not because he was scared, not because he was confused, but because silence had become his first language. People nearby slowed down. A few stopped. Someone lifted their phone slightly, sensing something was about to happen. This was familiar territory. Authority versus uncertainty. Noise versus stillness. The cop smirked. "What? Cat got your tongue," he added. "You don't talk much, do you?" Laughter came from somewhere in the background. The quiet man finally spoke. His voice was low, controlled. "No, officer, I'm listening." That answer didn't satisfy the cop. In his world, listening wasn't power. Speaking was. Commanding was. Being louder than the room was how respect was enforced. And this man wasn't playing by those rules. The officer circled him slowly, like a teacher scolding a student. "You look nervous," the cop said. "Something you want to tell me?" The quiet man shook his head. Calm, almost peaceful. And that calm made the officer uncomfortable, because chaos is easier to control than stillness. The cop leaned in closer now, invading space. "You know," he said, lowering his voice sarcastically, "people who stay this quiet usually got something to hide." The man met his eyes, not with anger, not with defiance, with patience. What the officer didn't know was that this man had spent years training his nervous system to stay calm under pressure. Years learning how to breathe while fists flew inches from his face. Years conditioning his mind to stay still while pain screamed through his body. He didn't fear confrontation. He respected control. This wasn't his first time being misunderstood. Growing up, he was always the quiet one. In school, teachers thought he wasn't paying attention. Classmates thought he lacked confidence. Coaches overlooked him at first because he didn't brag, didn't boast, didn't talk big. But while others talked about becoming fighters, he trained. While others posted highlights, he repeated basics. While others chased attention, he chased mastery. Every morning before the world woke up, he ran. Every night after the noise faded, he drilled. Wrestling, striking, conditioning, recovery. Silence was where he sharpened himself. Inside the gym, people learned quickly not to mistake him. The first time someone laughed at his calm, they paid for it on the mat. Not with cruelty, but with precision. Clean technique. Total control. He didn't try to dominate. He neutralized. That's what champions do. Back on the street, the officer mistook restraint for submission. "You hear me?" the cop said, louder now. "I asked you a question." "Yes, officer," the man replied evenly. The crowd felt the tension rise. This was no longer about compliance. This was about ego. Authority hates being questioned, but it hates being ignored even more. The officer scoffed. "You know, guys like you think staying quiet makes you tough." The man said nothing, because real toughness doesn't need defending. What the cop didn't know was that this quiet man had walked into octagons filled with screaming crowds. Thousands chanting against him, lights blinding, music pounding, adrenaline screaming for violence. And he had learned to slow his heartbeat anyway. He had faced men trained to break bones, to choke breath, to end careers, and stayed composed, stayed patient, stayed disciplined, because panic loses fights. Silence wins them. The officer gestured dismissively. "What do you even do, huh?" For the first time, the man hesitated, not out of fear, but because explaining himself had never mattered to him. "I fight," he said simply. The cop laughed, loudly. "Yeah, you and everyone else." People laughed again. The phones rose higher now. The officer shook his head. "You don't look like much of a fighter." That was true. No scars on his face. No tattoo screaming intimidation. No puffed chest or aggressive posture. Just balance, stillness, awareness. Because the most dangerous fighters don't look dangerous. They look prepared. The man adjusted his stance slightly, unconsciously. Feet grounded, spine aligned, breath steady. The officer didn't notice. Years of training had turned composure into instinct. What kind of fighting? The cop asked mockingly. Street stuff? YouTube boxing? The man finally answered fully. Professional. That word changed something. The laughter faded a little. Professional what? The officer pressed. Mixed martial arts. The cop paused. Someone in the crowd whispered. Another phone zoomed in. The officer frowned. Like UFC? The man didn't nod. Didn't smile. Yes. Silence fell, real silence this time. The officer blinked, clearly recalibrating. You're saying you're a UFC fighter? The man corrected him calmly. I was. The words landed heavier than shouting ever could. Because people don't retire from UFC fighting by accident. Someone in the crowd recognized him now. A murmur spread. A name passed quietly from mouth to mouth. The cop's posture shifted. For the first time, he stepped back. Respect arrived, not because the man demanded it, but because truth revealed itself. This is what lies beneath quietness. Discipline, endurance, control. The man hadn't raised his voice once, hadn't threatened, hadn't postured, and yet the entire dynamic had flipped. The officer cleared his throat. All right, he said, suddenly professional. You're free to go. The man nodded politely. No victory speech. No smagrin. No revenge. Because champions don't need to win every interaction. They already won long before. As he walked away, the crowd watched differently now. The phones lowered. The whispers followed him. The cop stood still, processing what had just happened. He had mistaken silence for weakness. And that mistake had exposed something deeper. Here is the truth most people never learn. The loud rely on intimidation. The quiet rely on capability. The loud need reactions. The disciplined need results. The loud burn fast. The consistent endure. What lies beneath calm is not emptiness. It is control earned through suffering. And the most dangerous people in the world are not the ones who shout. They are the ones who stay silent. Because they know exactly what they're capable of.